Okay. My internet's a little spotty right now.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So, no more links. So grab the FortiNet and you can start with the second part. Actually, yeah, that was the box, and then you're gonna need a console cable with it. Yeah, there are only like 5, and I'm demoing, or 6. I'm using one.
The cheese out. Okay.
Okay. Link this first. Okay. And then what we're gonna do after that is I'll explain the FortiNet. So let's share screen. So we're gonna do lab 13, which you'll find there. I didn't want to make it too lengthy because we only have a little bit, about an hour or so, a little bit over an hour to get this done. So on the Linksys cable, for the Linksys Vpn router, you are going to connect the Ethernet port to LAN 1, not the WAN or the DMZ. It has to go into the LAN 1. And then on the FortiNet, you simply connect the console cable, just like how you would do on a Cisco, to the FortiNet. If you want to explore its GUI, then you would use the Ethernet cable. But the console cable, you will also need to download Putty. Okay. So my internet's a little unstable. So I just want you to know on Zoom that I might get cut out. Okay. So let's talk about the lab. So today we are going to use 2 appliances. One is going to be your Linksys Gigabit VPN router. David, you can grab the FortiNet and a console cable. You will have to start with the second part first, and then we'll swap devices when the other one starts. So we are using 2 appliances. One is the VPN router, which is the part 1. Second is going to be your FortiNet FortiGate. So it is a small appliance for small business, security. On the Linksys VPN router, very much like your wireless router, the way it's designed is to have enhanced VPN throughput using gigabit Ethernet, and also you can add additional VPN capability compared to your normal router. So on the Linksys, if you're working on this, you simply just connect the power cable, and you are going to connect the Ethernet cable to LAN 1 port. Okay. Then you are going to open up a browser, and then you are going to put in its IP. And when you put in 192.168.1.1, very similar to your home router, you will see the interface. Okay. So what I did was I plug in my Linksys VPN router And if you're using a mobile device, you have to tell it that you're connecting to an unknown network and so on. I normally just disable my wireless, but I'm on wireless and LAN because I have to Zoom. So after you connect it, you are going to open up the browser and you're going to put in your IP address for your VPN router, which is 192.168.1.1. Okay. So I'll wait as some of you are setting that up. And then for those of you who are using the FortiNet, the second part, connect your console cable, your power cable to FortiNet appliance, and then plug the USB into your computer. You need to download Putty because they didn't put Putty on the desktop image. That might take a few minutes. The way that you connect it is the same way that you connect your Cisco appliances. Now, keep in mind that FortiGate has extensive configuration, okay? We cannot cover it, barely even the full basic configuration for administration, probably not in one sitting. So I just want to give you a little overview, but it does have a graphical user interface, which is a lot easier to configure. So you can connect to it using the Ethernet cable and so on. So if you're using the Linksys, you are going to use the IP address as provided in the instruction, 192.168.1.1. Yeah. Some of them don't have a CLI, but most Linksys on the higher Linksys stage. Yeah, even on the GUI, there's a way that you can actually upload a file to it if it has large enough RAM or VRAM. It uses basically RAM and ROM mostly. So on the router, I have one up here that actually uses the console cable, then you can use CLI. So if you look at it, if it's a Linksys and it doesn't have a console cable, then it doesn't have a CLI. Basically, it has a GUI. But on some of the GUI, if you go towards near the end of the configuration, you will find that there's a way to upload a file to it, right? Because you can extract files for backup to a USB, but some of them, it will let you save a file to it. So yeah, you can run the script depending on the model. Okay, so I'm gonna touch on this. It's pretty straightforward. So I'm using a different browser. And then your admin is password and user account is admin and admin. That's pretty standard for Linksys. And then once you're logged into it, it's gonna look like this. So like I said, unlike your other home routers or other Linksys router, this one does give you a little bit more control in VPN. So if you have a small business, you can set this up through the actual router itself. I know that your home router will have that also that capability, but this one just have additional VPN configuration. So it also have a DMZ port. If you look at the physical port, there's a port that's labeled DMZ. So you can connect a physical connection, a cable to that. So your DMZ should be like your web server, you know, maybe some application with your web server. So you can connect a switch to the router to that port. And then on that switch, you can put your web server and your other appliances that you need. I would put an application firewall along with some additional screen filtering capability, but the DMZ is designed to really publicly interface. Okay, so and in this lab, we're gonna touch a little bit on more on VPN and things like that. So when you got here, after you logged in, look at the status page, and it's gonna ask you to look at the type of attack. So we would see that it has the capability to, let me zoom in a little bit. It has the capability to block denial of service like most other routers, the new ones. And then it is able to inspect packets, or stateful packets anyways, your SPI, so that's on. So you can turn it on or off, but it comes default on. And you can, it also block WAN requests. Now, when you connect to the DMZ, you want to change this because it needs to be able to receive web traffic or web requests, like HTTP requests from clients. But since you don't have a web server, we can leave that on, okay? And then if you want to remotely manage this from somewhere else, you can turn that on, and then you can set up the access rules additionally to what it has. Now on this router, it does give you the capability to tunnel, and it provides you with 45 tunnels. So that means that we can set up quite a few Ipsec, and you can also do VLANs and VPN using a switch that supports VLAN and then connect to it. So here is where we would see, and so we can answer the question, what type of attack is prevented? We know it's DOS attack is prevented. What kind of request is blocked? And we know that your WAN request, and so WAN request is usually just from the internet. And we want to keep that off or enabled to block because we don't know what kind of traffic might be coming in. Until you need to enable it, you can. And then we want to see what kind of port is enabled for remote. So here, if you look at the remote management, it will show you port 443, which is HTTPS. Okay. Then we can take a look at multicast and IGMP pass-through allowed. Is it allowed? So when we look at this, we can see that the rest of the things are disabled unless you specify that, okay? And then the multicast is also not allowed. And what I clicked there was, what I did was I went down to here, and then I simply click remote management, and it will take me to the configuration. So, no. Then you can click save. Then on the left side, it should already open the firewall once you click that link. And if you need additional block, we can specify the filter there. So on the next part, it's going to ask you to click on access rules. So on the under the firewall on the left, you're going to click access rules. And I didn't reset mine, but you can see. So what we can do is we can specify on the firewall what we want. Remember that we are setting this up for virtual private network. So, and overall network too. So what we want to do is set the rules that will be effective for your LAN and your VPN. So one of the things that we should do is we should not use Telnet because it is vulnerable. And so we are going to set up the rules on preventing Telnet. So once you click the access rule, you are going to click the drop-down menu. You click add. I'm sorry. Go back. So you click here. Okay. And then what you will do is you will click add button. And then you are going to click access rule page, click the drop down menu, click action, and you're going to deny like this. So we click add. We're going to deny at the top. And then here you can specify the type of traffic. So if I wanted to block other protocols, I would set that up here. Now, if you're using Ipsec Vpn down the line, you want to allow Ipsec. Remember, we talked about VPN, and it's important that you set the policy for that. So we can go ahead and select Telnet. And if you want to do secondary also, you can, but I'm only going to show this for this. And then now, after we set that, we can click the source interface drop-down menu and click any. Okay, because internally you might have threads that would be using different source port compared to coming in from the WAN. So you can have LAN and WAN setting up when you set up any. Now, if you want to block the DMZ side, it does give you the option to do the DMZ. So as you can see, it shows that there. If you want this log, so we want any here, that will cover everything. Then your source IP, we can set that to any, and your destination IP. Done already? Wow, fast. Okay, then click save. And I already have one made. So you can always edit that or trash it. Okay. And then so if we want to deny any WAN traffic, we can change this. We can, so it does allow you to set up, allow, and deny. Okay, so this is really important down the line when you get more in depth with security, because on the Wi-Fi side, a lot of times this is what we have to do mostly. Okay. All right, so once we had set that up, we click save. And then on the left, now we're going to do a content filter with firewall. So go to the content filter. And so when I wrote this, I said, well, what would be, so you can basically, this is like the parental control of the router, right? But this is really geared for business. So you don't have parental control. Parental control is really a filter mechanism. So we're going to block a website. Okay. Now, the deal in security is that usually we whitelist things, which is better, but I want you to, to learn how to block and to learn how to control your access list. So here, we can enable forbidden domains. So let's say if we go www.gamble.com, right? You can add that in and it should show that here. So your list should be part of you. So depending on your acceptable use policy, then you would set that up. And then for the keywords, we want to block like pornography, child pornography, nudity, sex, unless the company is really open to that, then we can. So you can put in keywords. So basically that's just a content. Now you can set it to block at a certain time. So if you do 8 to 5 or 9 to 6 or always, I normally put things on always just in case. But if you want to open things up for people at a different time, you can. Which we don't do that. We do least privilege first. So, but anyway, like I said, depending on the organization. So your list should be pretty long. And the downside with blocking is your list always have to grow, okay? Because if it doesn't grow, it's going to limit people and that's going to create problem, or it allows people and that's going to create problem as well. Okay. So we're going to forbid gamble.com and we're going to forbid pornography as the key term content. Click save. And then you are going to take a screen capture of what this shows, right? The two that you added. Then now we are going to dive into the VPN. So on the left, you would see VPN. And as you can see, it is a VPN router. So you have options with a lot of the VPN traffic control and also security. So you can have gateway to gateway. This is a way that we can connect router to router. We can do client to gateway. We can do VPN pass-through and Pptp server. And I think the last two units it talks about that. So what I want to show you is that we can actually set up a client to gateway through the tunnel for systems that are connecting. Let's say you have remote workers, which is really common now. So we are going to click client to gateway. And remember, we have 45 tunnels. So this is only one. And you can also group your VPN. So here you're going to give it a name. We're going to call it company X. And your interface is going to be, I'm sorry, on the remote client setup, you're going to click the remote security gateway type, and you are going to select dynamic IP and email address. Keep in mind that if you select this option, you have to run the Dhcp, and that needs to be distributed for the client coming in. So when they authenticate, what will happen is that traffic is going to pull in and it's going to contact. Remember how we talked about the DNS and the DHCP always work together? So when the user authenticates, that's the DNS in the Active Directory, then that traffic's going to come in, and then the DHCP is going to kick in and it's going to leave an address. Why do we control it that way? Is because we don't want foreign IP coming in. Right, you can definitely do a lot of the like, you know, the web VPN that you subscribe, that could be any public IP. But we want the user to be part of our domain first before they get connected, you see? So you have to logically think about how that traffic is coming in from the router, which is where the WAN cutoff is, and where it needs to go. So when we set this up, we have to make sure that we have your DNS, your domain controller, and your AD set up, okay? And you can do that through the router. It has that capability, or you can do it through the server. But dynamically, server enterprise-wise is more effective. So we are going to make sure that for the remote, and for the local, you can also do like any IP ranges. As long as it's in that group, it should be fine. So we don't have to worry too much about that. So we are going to do user authentication. So once they authenticate, it gives them a token, and that token would tie to their SML, which is their security agent. And that will push all their stuff with, you know, their profiles and everything that you can set up through your group policy. So all of these are intertwined together, and you're going to see that cohesively connected. All right. Then we're going to choose, oops, yeah. So for your Ipsec, we are going to use the pre-shared key. We can use the group one so it's 2 level. We're going to do a group 1 and then a group 2. So on the first phase encryption, we want AES. That's the strongest one that will be available. And then I know SHA-2 is, you know, is accommodating with other appliances, but on this one, it's only using SHA-1. So for those, most of you already took Security Plus, so you already know what this is, right? Okay, because security and network, they always go together. You're gonna see that all of these is just gonna get repeated over time. And the more you know about protocols, the better it's gonna be. All right, so the lifetime, you know, this is gonna be the second for the phase 1. And you can reduce that if you want that to be more limited. And then for our group 2, we're going to increase the size for that. So it's going to be 1024. Now, the downside of this is when you increase the bit size, it's going to take more bandwidth and it's going to take longer. So you don't want to start out with something really high, because if you have, lots of clients are connecting, you're going to see a drop in bandwidth, and you want your bandwidth to be at least at the baseline. Okay, meaning that we want throughput, and we don't want people to have crawling speed, and it's just frustrating to work from home that way. And you see that with some organizations. Then we're going to do an AES again, and then we're also going to do a SHA-1, which is way better than MD5 hash, right? And then we can change this. So I put this to 36 seconds, 3600 seconds, but you can range it to however long that you want. Some company, they only give you like 2 minutes or so, or a minute to actually get you. And sometimes people, when they connect, you have to know that sometimes on their end, it might be a little slow. So you want to be flexible, but at the same time, you don't want it to be like a long time, right? And then you can put in your pre-shared key. And so after, and then the email address for the client. Okay. So your email address, I just put CDS at companyx.com. Remember that we make sure that we have this credential already exists in our directory. If you're using Linux, it has to be in directory already. And if you're using Windows, it has to be in AD already. Otherwise, it doesn't work, right? Okay. And then the pre-shared key. I just put don't hack me 3. So you can put in your pre-shared key, which is a phrase. Okay. And then take a screen capture. And then save. So once you have everything set up, and take a screenshot. Any questions? Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, it might be under parental control. Yeah.
And there's a way I can set the time. Like the same thing, right?
If you set it on the router, none of the devices will get through. So if you set like for your router to go from like 8 a.m. to, I don't know, 11 p.m., anybody try to go on it or connect to it after 11 p.m. won't work. Yeah, they do that for several reasons. From a business perspective, you save power, you know, and then sometimes they pay based on bandwidth. So, you know, but nowadays, not so much. ISDN days was like depending on the data that you send through. So they limit it so that way, kind of like how you pay for your data packets now, very much like that. So yeah, so it just saves money for the company. But yeah, for kids that works really well. You can do 8 to 8, and then after that they cannot be on, you know, the internet anymore. They just have to go to sleep.
Yeah, I know my mom is trying to help her out here. But the only issue is that it's gonna shut off for everybody.
You can filter it to allow certain devices and block. So if you know, like on the Apple device, you can set the ID for the Apple device, or the, you know, and then other device Android. So the Mac and the IP you can block.
Oh.
Yeah, so you can filter it and you can set the time for those devices, right? Yeah. Okay, so after we set that up, we are going to click on, we added that. So under the VPN, we're going to click the Pptp server. Okay, this one. And then we can enable. And then here it would give you the address range. Then you just put in the user, and remember that there are different types of VPN. So in the olden days, we would use PPP, and then that got improved to Pptp, which is very common still. And on Windows side, it's still supporting Pptp. And then you can also do Ipsec and other type of VPN. So we would do CDS. I think I missed that, so we should put in her full username. Company X. Sorry. I was probably trying to write instructions and do things at the same time. And then just give it a password. Make sure it's complex. And then we'll add it to list. So when you see your list, you should have, if you have, different VPN users, it should be there. So what does this mean for us? That when the client, remember earlier we set it to be remotely connecting, and it's going to acquire IP address at the same time. So our scope for the DHCP has to be in this, right? Between 200 and 204. Why is it only limiting the user to only be a few, right? So legacy wise, I think now because of COVID, it changes the horizon on remote workers. But back in the day, right, traditionally we learned that remote workers should be limited. Okay, so that's why, but you can always change your scope to be big, right? So if you have 10 users, you can put it for 10 IP. And so making sure that your IP addresses are set up. All right, then we are going to take a screenshot with CDS showing up there. And then after that, we're going to go and look at EasyLink VPN. So what I want you to also do when you go through classes like this with me, when you're using a hardware or an appliance, make sure you add that to your resume. Because in this industry, they look for product knowledge, right? Like how you would be able to configure this, know this, because when you say configure network appliances and configure security appliances, very broad. There are millions of appliances. So you want, and even when you say Linksys, you have to say the model, right? So take your smartphone before you go, take a picture of it in case you lose my lab document, and then you can put in configure VPN settings on Linksys LR214, things like that, okay? All right, then we're gonna click save there after the screenshot. Then we're gonna go into EasyLink VPN on the left, which is this right here. And then on this, what you can see is that you can set it up where it's web connected. You can have an inbound and an outbound EasyLink. So this allows you to control how the traffic comes in and the traffic leaving remotely, right? For all those clients that are connected. So you can add them. And then oh yeah, but just click on the inbound, and then you're gonna put her name again, CDS at companyx.com, and then the password that you created. And the authentication port, notice that it's using the 10443. That's still through HTTPS. Okay, and then your IP address. So it's gonna be under. We can set up an IP. So for the local group, we can do. I don't like using a .1 because that's really reserved for gateway. So you can give it. So let's say we had her at 200 earlier, so you can give it at 200. The beginnings are only reserved for dedicated systems. And then click save. And you should see that here, right? It's gonna wait for connection until she's connected. So once she's connected, it's gonna tell you there, and it's gonna tell you, the group 1, group 2 that we set up, and then it will do a ton. If it's doing the tunnel test, it will tell you the update there. That's what's cool about this model with Linksys. When I selected the appliance, I said, oh, if they can buy me this, I'll show my students how to use it. So it will update the status. Okay. So once we click save, we're going to look at your DHCP setup, and it does have the DHCP and the DNS capability. So click on the DHCP. And remember that here is your range. And so if we want it to be higher, we can change our scope. I think on the wireless router end, it's a lot easier to set up compared to you see in Microsoft, right? So here, what we're gonna do is we are going to change up our minutes. We want to lease it for 7 days because by default, that will be only 7 or 24 hours, okay? And it also depends on how long you want how many addresses you want to lease and how long you want to lease it for. So we're gonna change it up to 10080. And I think so you can change this. I didn't write the instruction for it, but I would do from 100 to 49. And that covers 149 system. What's the maximum limit for Wi-Fi? What's the magic number in wireless connection, Unlimited, 25, 2000, what is it? What is it? No, a lot higher than that. So imagine at home, I know I have more than 25 devices connecting to my Wi-Fi. How many do you think it is? There's one magic number that they use for a lot of the Wi-Fi connections. So when you are ad hoc, how many do you think that is? 127. Okay, because it's gonna throttle like around. That means it's gonna go really low. It's gonna drop your. So as you add more, because it's gonna bottleneck if your router, right? So 127 is where you would have a limitation, and even on the new router. Okay. Now so this is why when you look at APs, the industrial APs are different than your normal Wi-Fi router. Okay, so industrial AP, and this is why we do a distributed environment where we would connect a bunch of APs, because people don't have, even when they authenticate to that SSD, that it can go to one AP or another AP or a third AP and so on, and all of those funnel them back to our main backbone. Okay. Because if for our centralized, if you only have one access point, you're going to have a bottleneck right there. And then you can set up load balance for all your access points. And so that way it's not going to go to that one point. Okay, so it's all about design, and we just have to logically think about that. Okay, so your DNS, we are just going to put in 192.168.1.2. or I'm sorry, .20, and then for our wins, because we're using the same rule. So 192.168.1.20. And then you can click save. And then that, take a screenshot. Okay. And then now I didn't touch on Openvpn on this, but you can take a look at it. The configuration is pretty similar to what you've seen in the last one that we had set up with the easy link. So a lot of the technology that's available that you subscribe to for VPN is using Openvpn, right? So you can set up a client and a server in the same concept like how you would have a regular VPN, but it's just using different protocol for connection. And you can still make them authenticate. So a lot of companies, they use Openvpn. Okay. Now, on top of this, the next thing that you should do is to go into your firewall beyond this, right? Because we set filter here. But if you want to be secure, then you have to go to your firewall appliance and be able to set that up. And hence FortiNet. I can't give you a lot of it because itself can be a whole entire course. So a lot of companies now use FortiNet. Okay. And then you waiting for that. There's only 10 steps with FortiNet, so you'll be done. Okay, so for those of you who, if you're done with FortiNet, you can work on your Linksys, and then just make sure you guys reset when you're done before you unplug the power. All right, so while that is that, I'm gonna close this. Unplug this. I have to bring my other laptop today because it does not have a We'll see. If we have more money, we'll buy more clients. Okay, so, and you will find that FortiNet is very close to your Cisco appliance. And a lot of companies are looking for FortiNet skills these days. They are very common for security appliance. I think I missed a little step. Oh yeah, I did say something about. Okay, let's wait for some of you have those out. Right, when you're done, you can return it, and then there you possibly can use. So if you look at the FortiGate family, it's big. You have a lot of different models, right? And of course, the one we're using is on the smaller scale. But they make routers, switches, security appliances, so they stand up to what you see with Cisco nowadays, right? Palo Alto is another one that's highly demanded, but Palo Alto is very expensive. So when I was in school, there were only like Cisco was primarily the ones. And then you do have some like Juniper start to come along, and then so everybody wanted to know Cisco. But nowadays you have so many different companies competing, right? So keep in mind that FortiGate, you can use the graphical user interface, and it uses iOS. So it has like an interface where you can click the button and configure, like what we've seen with Linksys. But you can use CLI with it, which is nice and beautiful. Now, different version of OSs. So when I was testing this, right, their documentation uses OS version 7.0.0, but your appliance came with version 6.0.0 because, you know, these arrived years ago, at least 3 years ago. Actually, no, a year ago. So what you should do when you get these appliances is to update the firmware on it, right? Now, when you connect, they come with different power plugs. So just get the one for United States or North America, because these are for other continents. It's different AC. This is one of my favorite appliance brand too. Not to be favorable or biased, but I think they do a good job with their designs. And of course, I left in a hurry and I left my power plug at home. Let me see. This is the 12. Yes, I did leave it at home. Okay, I'll just talk about it. It's command line, so not too much to really see anyway. Okay. So as some of you have finished working on the FortiNet, FortiGate, and this is the F40, right? If you look at the FortiGate family online, you will find different appliances, different model. So we will need to terminal into it, and you would use baud rate 9600. I think I put down the FortiGate guide, right? They have their documentation online, so you can use that. Okay. Do we have enough for everybody? Total? Okay. So, to start, if you don't know, you just put the help command, which is going to be your, it's going to list all your commands that you normally see. But I want to show you what their guide looks like. Okay, so if you start and you don't know where to go, you go to FortiNet guide, and of course they come with like some basic instruction on the top on how to connect it, right? If we have a console cable, it's gonna go to the console port, and it uses the same console cable as the Cisco ones, the newer, the one that you see there, prolific, right? Now, if you, the USB is just like all your other appliances. You can use that to back up and transfer some of the configuration. It has these ports, so there are only 3 of the LAN ports, and you will have one for the WAN connection, right? So when you need to configure, you can connect, and it tells you that you can connect to port 1 using an Ethernet adapter, and then just like what we did with the Linksys, you just go to the IP address that tells you on the sticker. Okay. Oh, I'm such a forgetful person lately. I left my power cable at home. I had it all ready. All right. So using the CLI, it shows you on how you can set that up. Now you can also use SSH through Putty, but you have to make sure that you have enable SSH. So after you connect it through the serial connection, you can enable the SSH and then use SSH to connect to it, just like all the other appliances. Okay. Now notice on the top, it shows the version of the iOS. So this instruction is written for different versions, just like Cisco, different version. There's certain command that works and certain command that doesn't work. Okay. And then also, if you're trying to add things that it doesn't have the feature for, it's not going to take it. Okay. All right. Any questions? So you have a graphical user interface. You can use the graphical user interface. It walks you through each step on how to set that up. You can also set it up to cloud for FortiNet, where it will be able to connect to the cloud service. And then there's some VPN information here. All right. So let's talk about the commands that we're using. So the way that you enter the configuration mode for the appliance is going to be config system interface. That's just like how you did the same thing in Cisco, right? Config sys. And then what you do is you can edit the port or VLANs and things like that. So unlike Cisco, here is where you would have to say interface, blah, 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 right? Like gigabit, blank, blank, blank. Now on this one, you just, when you want to create it and modify it at the same time, the beautiful thing is cohesively in one edit command. And so you just do edit port 3, and then you turn it on when you do a status up, that's just enable. And so when you do a VDOM, when you use a VDOM, that's a virtual domain, and you can just create it right then and there. So I would say VDOM, a string like root. So that means that it's gonna set that port for the virtual domain named root. Okay. And then we want to do N to get back. And if it throws you some kind of error, it's still going to take you back to your previous. Okay. Because it will tell you, oh, well, you haven't done with setting interface and everything for it. So what you're doing here is you're setting port 1, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. And you can also group the ports and addresses for other purposes. Now, when you read their documentation, this part, it actually has additional commands. Things like set type and stuff like that, but that's work with the new OS, but on the 6.0 set type doesn't work. Okay. Questions? All right. Bye. Yes, for the other class. Yeah, but for this one, we'll be on Tuesday for final review. Okay. That the Linksys? Oh, the FortiNet? You can, but I think you have to convert your script not as a PY, but it should be because it's Linux in the back. It's Linux because the commands that it's using, it's Linux in the back. Yeah, I saw that when I started reading into the command list, it's Linux command. So all the embedded systems usually run Linux in the back. So, you know, I don't know if they program it to, I want to say, receive, right, a certain low level instruction, but I'm sure if you dig long enough, you'll be able to find it on developer side. So if you can get to the vector or the developer side, you can probably set up a script. I'm sure you can, right? Because all of these should be automated somehow. Yeah, I'll find out. I'll let you know. But yeah, it runs Linux in the back.
Oh, no, what I wanted to know in general.
Yeah, remember how we did that in 30B? You can automate it, so you can see later. You can use something like with YAML or so you can use like a library like Ansible. And you can do that. Yeah, you can set up Ansible and you can do that with Ansible. So what it does is, you send it through a system, which is your computer, and then it just, be able to connect to whichever IP and then execute the instructions for them. All right, configure system interface and aggregate here. This allows you to, and it talks about aggregate link. So that will give you the capability to combine the links in case that so this part is for redundancy. That's what we want. And we want to make sure that the redundant interface can be grouped, but it's only going to link one at a time. However, the aggregate link group can be used to combine as a bandwidth. So let's say that you have a certain amount of bandwidth on one, and then you have on a certain FortiNet, it allows, usually it gives you two, right? So what you can do is you can combine that for bandwidth, and so you will have a total bandwidth that's going to be larger. Okay, so that's what aggregate means. So you can have up to 8 if that's supported on the appliance. So when you do that, you're going to have to set up a system interface, and then you're going to do an edit aggregate, right? We simply name it aggregate. So on the software side, what it does is create a node called aggregate, which is a container, and then it's going to be able to link things together. And this is how you set up a static IP for that aggregate. And this is how you configure access. So you do a set allow access. And you would put in all of the utility or the protocols that you want to allow. So if we want to allow ping, we would set that. We want to allow HTTPS, right? SNMP, HTTP. So all of those things we can allow. Then you also want to identify devices. So all wireless router and access point, it actually look at who's connecting, right? By MAC address ID and also serial number. And so you want to set the device identifiable to be on enabled. Then we would set the Forti heartbeat to be enabled. And then we also want to do SNMP index, and we can set the index value. And the way this is different than Cisco is you do a next end versus an exit. And like I said, this is only a snippet of what that would be overall, right? Question? So then we can create Ipsec Vpn. And so you simply just tell it configure or config VPN Ipsec phase 1 interface. And then you're gonna have one main VPN and a backup VPN. So we would have a main VPN, and we want to make that will be your on-demand NAT traversal. And then you have to do a pre-shared key. So whatever the phrase here, I just put secret, but that will be your passphrase here for the shared key. And then your remote gateway, you will put in the IP address for that. And that will be your type static. And your backup is pretty much the same, but different pre-shared key. And you want to monitor your main VPN. And that will be it. So that's how we will be able to set, we see a little bit of, you know, access control and a little bit of VPN setup and a backup of VPN. In case the first one fails.
Oh,
Yeah, but you know, logically on an appliance, in case it's corrupted, but if it dies, then your backup VPN. So the idea with this is to be able to take that configuration and send it across the network, right, on different appliances. So when one failed, the other one would set up. So on each of like this device, you would have two sides, one as the main one, and ideally physically we would have, the way that we look at it, virtual private network is like a one network, and then a backup virtual private network is another network. Logically, it only exists in one appliance, right? So if you physically visualize that, if one failed somehow or was attacked or brought down, then you have another one available for your client, so the backup kicks in. That's why we have to monitor the main one.
you don't need multiple times.
Yeah, but then it becomes a single point failure, right? So then what happens is if they reach through your firewall on this, then they would be able to. So they normally would go through and they would look at different layer, right? Like they would look at, oh, what kind of services you have, and then they would disable certain type of services and gradually. So attacking takes time, okay? And then they would study, they would, you know, normally that's what scans are designed to do is the gathering information stage is very important. Like the most homework that you can do is the shortest time, because sometimes you know, and then they will be in there for a day and they'll come back another day. That's why like you don't do it in one sitting. And a lot of times, like when people hire pen testers, the way that they say, okay, well, you know, you can be in it for 48 hours or 24 hours to find out as much as you can. That's not really how things work mostly, right? Like initially, they will be in there for a day or two and looking at things, but usually they don't get all of everything. Most of the attacks that you see historically, it will, if you look at the logs that are presented, they've been in there 6 months, a year, you know. So because escalation of privileges in a large enterprise, you can't escalate through all of the system in one day.
Right.
You have to follow the breadcrumbs, right? Like this leads to this, to this, to this, and then just think about it. Like when you configure things, then you're like, oh, I have to go and configure this, then I have to go configure that. So the trail gets longer, you know, as you branch off to different things, and that's the way it works. Unless you know the network inside out, you're like, okay, I can go here, go here, go here, here. But the most homework you can do on the outside is just gonna be, you know, like an overview of what might, like, yeah.
Actually, you know, and I was getting my phone and those reports that was on 0.5. I wrote that. Oh, you did?
So you know, potentially it could be a virus, right? But it is an Apple port. So if you're using Apple Cloud or Xsan, it is tied to Xsan. So Apple created like a server, a SAN server appliance that would connect. Sometimes other like MacBook and stuff like that connect to their cloud server using that. But when I looked it up, Xsan, according to Wikipedia, right, it's just gonna be for storage. But I saw that, you know, a bunch of other security companies posted that when they see that, and if Xsan doesn't exist, then it could be a NIMDA or it could be potentially a vulnerability. So close support if you don't have that. But some people posted that they have, you know, Apple TV or Apple sharing, like when you're streaming from your phone to another device. Sometimes it uses that port. So if that's the case, turn it off. And then if your kids complain because they can't use their Apple device or whatever, then turn it back on.
So in general, you have a port that's on the
It's a private port. It's private to Apple. It's part of Apple Link.
But in general, like, you know, like another day and I do like, how do I know whether it's it or not? Like,
Yeah, so yeah, you're just gonna have to look at who on INA they have a list of registered ports, and this one is the private port. So and it's also, you know, it's registered to Apple. So Apple had set up like, you know, it's gonna use these things of ports, and on Apple website it shows that. So the only way that you have to do is research it, especially the uncommon ports like that. Yeah, there's no way that everybody would know. And even like I try to look at some of the threads that people post about security on that port. It's not very clear either because, you know, some company they said that it, you know, they suggest that you just turn it off because it's just a vulnerability, and I see it. But yeah, if you assess and if you know, if you're not using that service, if you're not using that type of system, turn it off. Be safe, right? There were some incidents that relates to that port, but yeah, there's not a whole lot of stuff because it might be, you know, because with Apple products too, sometimes it's not very prevalent compared to Microsoft or Linux or, you know, so you don't see a lot of posts for it. You know, and then maybe Apple is also containing some of that, right? But I do feel like, you know, just to really protect their PR, a lot of some of the things are really censored. So it might go to their tech support, but their tech support is not publicly shown. It might just be to the client, or, you know, compared to other form of system where we would see tech support would be very publicly open. Like Microsoft does that. They would just be able to see everything, like all the threads. Yeah, they don't publicly display a lot of. Yeah, so yeah, I looked into Xsan and I tried, you know, so you have to look at the inventory of what you're using. Okay. Not too bad, laugh, huh? No problema.
yeah.
Except for I forgot the power. I left my mind at home again. Okay, so next Tuesday, I will do a Zoom final review. If you can't make it, I understand some of you drive far to be here. But I will be in this room to do the Zoom because some of my students, they like to come here my night class. Even I tell them, you can do Zoom. No, Dr. Wynn, I want to come in. Okay, we will let you come in. So if you wish to be here, you can. I know I'm not going to force you to be here, but yeah, we will cover the final review from the beginning to end. And then don't forget that you have the network cost practice test. We got to do that. I have reopened all the availability for all your assignments and lab from the beginning to end per request. So if you miss anything, now is the time to turn it in before December 5th, so I can get all my grades updated. This class is easy, the other class is kind of big. So, okay.
I'm not sure if I can get 100% on it, because some questions are, do I just, and then it gives me the opportunity to answer the question.
Yeah, so the learning mode, it gives you all the answer, the assessment, yeah, just do the best as you can, right? Because at the end of the day, like, you know, so I want you to know where you're at right now, right? If you get like a crazy test, like what practice, I feel like some of the questions like crazy, but so in the case that they pull the question from, you know, like that, how well will you do? 90 minutes, 90 questions. And then, you know, you can always study the book and improve your score, and then that's it. Right? So, yeah, go ahead. Yes, 90 minutes, 90 questions. And also after this class, I'm gonna, well, Rosalind is working on purchasing the vouchers. I guess because we have to send in a requisition for the vendor, which takes a while for RCCD to approve. So once that goes, so the money is in the pot. We just not have to tell them, oh, this is what we're going to use it for. And so, so once she has the voucher, I'll let you know, and then you will have the time that they bought it until 12 months later to be able to test. You can do it virtually now. So.
So we have to only choose one, like.
No, I think we put in for two, about $600. So that, you know, I had asked them to buy A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus for now with the amount of money for this year. That comes from Cal State, right? That was a grant that we wrote. So that $600, if you think about it, so you can do like Network Plus and Security Plus. I don't know if it's short, but I think they gave us discount, so we might be able to get two. I was shooting for 3, but I don't, you know, if we have leftover money, we'll buy another one. So we'll get, so what they did was I told them to buy like 25 of this, you know, 30 of that, and then we'll just distribute the students that are registered for apprenticeship. And then if we run out, then we'll buy more with whatever's left. And then if we don't have enough money, then we'll just have to wait till next year and buy more. So it's yearly, right? You have to spend the money by a certain amount of time. It's all about shifting money around and grants. Yeah, so for as you complete the class, right? So I will work with her. I did got quotes for it, so we should have it ready. And I hate that it's always delayed, but you know, I can't say on when the money is going to be distributed, especially the holidays too, and it's on the weekend. So I'll let you know. And if you don't hear about that, ask, because you know I do forget. All right. Uh-huh.
The 200 and then apprenticeship 25, the class.
So APP 450 is non-credit, but it's like hours, right? See, the work experience 200 or CIS 200 is 1 credit.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm arguing with them about 1 credit and how many hours I am required to contact because I'm over my limit. But yeah, it's the same thing. But APP 450 doesn't require, it's for apprenticeship. So it's, you know, because the work experience, the way it's written is that you have to either volunteer work or something in it. But we've been using it. So yeah, it's like just a way that we want to track it. Bye. How you doing? So yeah. So eventually we'll offer it as APP 450. So it's like you can take it at any time. It's not like gonna impact your, and for the 1 credit, it's like if you did your resume, sorry, and did the practice test, basically. So I have like a 1 hour class in spring, like in
Yeah.
the middle of the day.
That's one of the days actually, because I was looking for the ATP 45.
Yeah, we can't offer it yet because it's not fully approved.
Oh.
Yeah, it's only approved at Norfolk Road class.
Right, okay.
Yeah, and I can't do it online because there's no online record for it. So it's like a lot of different criteria. Take it. If you don't show up, I'm not gonna have a cow on it. As long as you just make sure that you work for us and then get. Yeah. So it looks like you have an interview too at Loma Linda, right?
It was only on the internet.
Yeah.
It was pre-recorded.
Okay.
It is like 11:45 at night.
Good. Fine. Do your best. I know David has to. And then I know that Dynamic Computers, I think they're waiting for you. And then I think Alfonso and mostly, I know Irene was also supposed to do the video interview, but she has to turn it in. So yeah, so we have employers. We have one in Upland right now that they're asking for people. It's just really far. Nobody wants to start. Hmm? Yeah. I wonder if it has night hours. Ontario. Let me see if Daniel posted. Okay.
What did you say about the one interview? They have the question where they ask how you able to get your bachelor's degree while you're working 20 hours a week. And I was thinking that maybe they're interviewing people from something as well.
They might. I think they probably selected a couple of you from San Bernardino. And also other schools, so can't say that. Yeah, I know that they told us that they might be selecting from other schools too. Yeah, so do your best. Yeah, the Cal State San Bernardino 40 hours. That's an easy answer. You just be like, I now that the COVID is happening, there are a lot of online classes. I can manage that outside of my work hours, and and then I will focus on, I'm not going to leave my school behind. I want to make sure that I brush up my skill and be prepared for your organization.
I would use that.
Yeah. I did one of my first few interviews were panel interviews. Usually they are panel interviews. So this is easy when you record. It's much, it's hard. Like you have to do a few tries, but after a while it gets. Right. But panel interviews are intimidating, especially if you're new to it. But yeah, I remember most of the panels were just male, and then a couple IT managers were female. But now you probably see more female.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're gonna try to get. For my goal for next year is we're gonna try to get Kaiser. We're gonna try to get Sabova. I know that they're on board. They're just gonna tell us if they're hiring. We're gonna try to reach out to Morongo. It's really hard to get Morongo on board, but I did work with them when I was at COD. And I know San Manuel, they recently changed their name or whatever, but I know I have quite a few contacts there, so I'll reach out to them and see if they're hiring. But casinos, the benefits are good, the hours are good. From the IT side, they pay you well, and you move up the ladder very quickly. So. Yeah. Yeah, he's a CIO for Savone. Yeah, he's on my website. Because I reached out to him a while back. He actually asked me when he went for his master's degree. He asked me, like, what school should he go to for his master's degree? And I said, you work a lot? And he's like, yeah, I just do online. So he did. And then, so I think he was like an IT director, and then he became like the executive. So he had sent one of the managers to our meeting. So I was like, finally, because, Yeah, I run into students sometimes at things and I was like, and they would remember. And you know, it's been what, 16, 17 years. I think. Sometimes I'm walking through Lowe's and they're like, Miss Wynn! And I was like, oh, I didn't see you. It's nice to see them successful. One day I'm gonna walk through the crowd and you're gonna say, I remember you, and I'll be all old. Yeah, I remember networking. Enjoy your night. I will see you all on Tuesday on Zoom, or you can come by. And because of COVID, we can't do pizza right now, but later on, I know. Later on, we will. I'm afraid to buy pizza and someone gets sick, and then, yeah.
Thank you, Dr.
Bye. 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 Fonda, you okay? Okay. Dave, you okay? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, it's because on the new iOS, it doesn't. That's an old iOS. On the new iOS, it doesn't. Yeah, it's fine. Well, if where are you at? This part? It should take you back to. It should take you back to like the before the configuration. Then you just do Oh, you can't do the monitor? Yeah, let's just skip that. Do the traversal. Because if it's not activated, it might not be able to monitor.
It just gets stuck there on that. So, I mean, it just doesn't affect the monitor main VPN, but then yeah, that traversal is
Okay.
going, is going.
I thought I got through that, but okay. I'll check that.
Around with it, and
Okay, that's fine.
I had a phone interview with Brian.
Okay, for DCS, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we were supposed to meet today, but I guess he's have like a cold and he doesn't want to risk anything.
Yeah.
So
You want to meet in person?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was supposed to meet him today, but canceled. So we're gonna meet on Tuesday. So I think I'm back good. Okay.
That's good. He's really nice.
So he was your former student?
Yes.
Oh, really?
That's what he told you?
No, yeah, he's doing it.
Oh, no. One of his clients is one of my former students, but no, I knew him from way back, but yeah, I have some students that work at, no, one of my former student did apprenticeship for him. He recently quit because, his family, his mom got sick. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he told me pretty much that like outside I went to like the learning and stuff, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like,
Yeah, I guess it's a good platform to kind of learn because they do a lot of troubleshooting and installing stuff for people. So, it's always good to learn hardware stuff first, and then you might have some configuration things. But
that's what he kind of told me. He's like, I'm gonna probably give you a server to take home, and then you're gonna work on it, configure it at home. That way, you get more hands-on when you're here. And I'm like, well, that's kind of cool too, because like here, if I do it over and over again, it'll just like.
Yeah, because normally when we do a lab, it's only one lab. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to repeat it, otherwise.
So I told him that's really cool because like if I take the hardware home, I'll be able to do it on my time and kind of just go over and over again if I don't get it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm willing to do that. It's kind of like something nice. He's like, yeah, so if you're willing to do that, then let's set something up. And I'm like, yeah, for sure. Like, let's do it. So that's why he wanted to meet today, but that happened. So we'll see how it goes on Monday.
Okay.
Tuesday, I'm excited.